Someone said that to you after a bad result. Maybe it was a colleague on Monday morning. Maybe it was your partner watching you go quiet for 3 hours after the final whistle. Maybe it was a friend who supports a different team and just couldn't understand why you weren't okay. It's just a game. And something moved in you. Not sadness, not quite anger. Something more like being told that something real about you doesn't count. That reaction is an overreaction. It's actually the logical output of something your brain has been building for years. When researchers study how fans relate to their clubs, they use the term team identification, the degree to which someone sees the team as part of who they are. Not a preference, not a hobby. Part of the actual self. The same category as where you're from, what language you think in, who raised you. For fans with high identification, the team is part of the answer to the question of who you are. That's not a figure of speech. Robert Cialdini figured some of this out in 1976, and he wasn't even studying football fans specifically. He was watching what university students wore to class on Mondays. After a weekend win, students showed up in university sweatshirts, hats, anything with the school logo. After a loss, the same students wore plain clothes. They hadn't stopped supporting the team. They just stopped publicly connecting themselves to it. Cialdini also tracked the language. After wins, we won. After losses, they lost. Same team, same people. The pronoun changed based on whether being connected to the team felt good or bad that week. He called the win behavior burging, basking in reflected glory. The retreat after a loss is corfing, cutting off reflected failure. The terms are ugly. The behavior is something you've probably done without noticing, maybe even in the last few weeks. And I know what some people are thinking right now. Okay, but that's unconscious image management. It's not the same as actually feeling hurt by a result. Fair. So here's the part that's harder to dismiss. Studies on high identification fans consistently show that after a loss, they experience drops in self-assessed competence. Not just mood, competence. The felt sense of being capable and effective in the world. That drops after a game they didn't play in, involving people they've never met over an outcome they had zero influence on. He said low identification fans feel disappointed after a loss. High identification fans feel like something happened to them. That's a different experience of the same 90 minutes. Henri Tajfel spent years trying to understand why group membership matters so much to people. He was a Polish Jew who survived World War II while most of his family didn't. And after the war, he became one of the central figures in social psychology. His work on social identity theory in the late 1970s made the case that humans don't just have individual identities, we have group identities. And the status of those groups feeds directly into how we feel about ourselves. When your group is doing well, you're doing well. When your group loses standing, something in you loses standing too. The brain doesn't separate those two things cleanly. It was never designed to. So the fan who feels personally wounded by a relegation or a cup exit or a bad transfer window, they're not being irrational. They're running exactly the software Tajfel described. The team's failure registers as a partial failure of the self, not metaphorically, as an actual signal that something about their identity is under threat. The question is, why some people have that level of identification and others don't? And the honest answer is that it usually isn't a choice anyone made consciously. Most high identification fans didn't pick their club the way you'd pick a restaurant. The attachment formed when they were young, often through someone else, a father who watched every match, an older cousin who took them to their first game, a city that had one club and no real alternative. The team arrived before the person had any mechanism to evaluate it. It just became part of the furniture of who they were. And then they grew up, and the team was still there. It sat in the same mental compartment as childhood and family and the place they came from. That's not something you can reason your way out of as an adult. The attachment isn't rational because it was never formed through reason. This is also why two fans of the same club can respond to a loss completely differently. One watches the game and goes to bed annoyed. The other watches the same game and can't talk to anyone for 6 hours. Same club, same result, same final score. different depth of identification, usually traceable to different histories with the sport, how early, through whom, in what context. The person who shrugs probably came to the club later, or came through a different door, or just never had the years of accumulated memory that make the team feel like something personal. In 1998, Paul Bernhardt measured what happens in the body during all of this. He tracked testosterone levels in male fans watching their teams play, first a college basketball game, then a World Cup match. Fans of the winning team saw their testosterone go up after the final whistle. Fans of the losing team saw it go down, the same hormonal shift that happens in the athletes on the field. In people who sat in their seats the entire time and physically did nothing. Their bodies were registering the result as if they had competed. You know what this feels like from the inside. You've been short with someone on a Saturday night for a reason they couldn't name. You woke up the next morning and felt it again before you even remembered why. You sat with a quiet, specific resentment toward a friend whose team just beat yours. Not the joking kind, the kind that surprised you a little. That's what happens when a result is connected to your sense of yourself. Deeply enough that losing doesn't just disappoint you, it destabilizes you. And the people who don't feel any of that, the ones who watch the same game and genuinely shrug and move on, they're not more reasonable. They have a weaker attachment. The team isn't carrying their identity the way it carries yours. They can afford to shrug because there's less at stake for them personally when the result goes wrong. Telling a high identification fan to just relax is like telling someone to care less about their family name when someone insults it. Technically possible. Not really how any of this works. A 2019 study out of Ohio State found that fans who watched a loss together in the same room with other supporters showed less of a drop in self-esteem than fans who watched alone. Sharing the defeat with people who understood it buffered some of the psychological impact, which makes sense. If the team is part of your identity and your identity is partly social, then having your group around you when it takes a hit matters. The fandom isn't just the emotional investment, it's also the thing that catches you when that investment goes wrong. Think about what that means for the person who told you it's just a game. They're not wrong about the facts. 11 players kicked a ball, a number changed on a scoreboard, no one was physically hurt. From the outside, looking at the raw events, it is just a game. But they're describing the wrong thing. The question isn't what happened on the pitch. The question is what happened to you and what you were carrying into that match that made the result land the way it did. Your history with the club, the people you've watched matches with or used to watch with, the version of yourself that got attached to this team before you even knew what attachment meant. That's not a game. That's years of something that was real. And the person who can't see that isn't more grounded or more adult. They just don't have that particular investment, which is fine, but it means they're not a reliable judge of what you should or shouldn't be feeling. There's one more layer to this that doesn't get talked about. When someone says it's just a game, they're not only dismissing the result, they're dismissing the system that the result belongs to. The rituals around the match, what you eat, who you call, where you sit, the superstitions you know are superstitions but follow anyway, the specific way you feel in the week before a big game, the low-level anxiety that something could go wrong. All of that is real behavior that a real person has built around a real attachment. Calling that an overreaction doesn't make it smaller. It just adds something on top. The feeling that you're wrong for feeling it, which is its own separate thing to deal with on top of the loss. High identification fans who get that response from people around them often end up feeling two things at once. The original grief about the result, and then a second layer of isolation from being told the grief doesn't make sense, which usually makes the whole thing worse. So when someone tells you it's just a game, what they're really saying is the way your brain works is wrong. Your brain isn't wrong. It did what brains do. It found a group, attached to it, made it part of you. The losses hurt because the attachment is real. That's not a flaw. That's the cost of caring about something that actually matters to you. What is worth asking, and this isn't a question you have to answer out loud, is how much of your sense of yourself is running through the club right now. Because if a League Cup exit on a Tuesday night can ruin a Wednesday morning, that's the team carrying a significant amount of weight. Weight that existed somewhere before football gave it somewhere to land, and will need somewhere to go regardless of results. That's not an accusation. It's worth knowing.